Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, your home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. In today's video, we're pleased to welcome Norma Chu to the program. She's the founder and CEO of DDC Enterprise Limited, or DayDayCook, and happens to be the first female CEO to adopt a Bitcoin Treasury standard or position at a publicly traded company. Now, in addition to that, DDC just came out with some massive news this morning, which we're going to be covering in today's interview. Before we get into it, take a second, hit the like button, you guys. Big help to myself and the channel. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join and let us know in the comment section below if you've heard of DDC Enterprise before and if you're currently holding shares. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's interview. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, we've got Norma Chu, the CEO and founder of DDC Enterprise, or DayDayCook. This is a specifically interesting interview as you guys just came out with a massive press release today. We're going to talk about that in a second, but before we do, Norma, welcome to the program. Thanks for making the time today.
Thank you, Bryce. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it should be a good discussion. This company obviously turning a lot of investor heads. DayDayCook has pivoted towards a Bitcoin Treasury standard. That's what we're going to be talking about. But before we get into that, Norma, can you tell us about yourself, why you ended up founding DDC Enterprise or DayDayCook?
Sure. Maybe I'll start with a bit of a background introduction. Born and raised in Hong Kong, but I grew up in Seattle, Washington, since I was, 12 years old. Went to University of Washington. I majored in finance, and when I was growing up, I had two passions. One was really the stock market, and the second one was cooking. So after graduating with a finance degree, I was in investment banking for a couple years in Seattle, and I moved back to Hong Kong in my mid-20s. I started DDC about 13 years ago, and it was really out of my second passion for cooking. I grew up with, Martha Stewart and Jamie Oliver, and when I moved back to Hong Kong, I realized a lot of young people didn't really enjoy cooking. So I wanted to create a platform that promotes, future generation to cook at home, and that was the start of DDC.
Awesome. I'm smiling because we have two little kids, a 4 and a 2-year-old, so we're cooking a lot here as well, and we've started exploring some of these meal prep or delivered meal kits as well. So obviously a big market for that with today's generation, how busy everyone is. Can you give us an overview of the company itself, your current operations, where you guys serve, and just kind of a high-level overview of the business?
Sure. I mean, we started as a content creator a long time ago, but over the years, we've kind of expanded the business scope from content to content commerce. And right before the pandemic, like you said, we started launching our own branded product portfolios, which really focus on providing convenient meal solutions. In terms of the business, I took it public in 2023 on the New York Stock Exchange. And right now we run several brands back in mainland China and also in the US market. In terms of size of the business, it's growing about 30% year on year. In terms of scale, we're going to expect about 45 to 48 million in revenue this year, generating positive cash flow with a net profit margin of roughly 3 to 4%. So that's kind of the current operation.
Yeah, very exciting. And I wanted to highlight the underlying business. We've seen a lot of companies getting involved in Bitcoin or transitioning over to Bitcoin. But in this case, Norma, you guys are very adamant. The underlying business itself is extremely healthy, a lot of demand and growth. Bitcoin is really a complement to that strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we continue to explore whether we can integrate the two. And I think there are a lot of possibilities down the road.
Most definitely. I can already think of a few myself. So with that being said, let's get into the Bitcoin decision. What ultimately made you decide we need to adopt a Bitcoin standard? We need Bitcoin on our corporate balance sheet. How did that decision work?
Sure. Growing through acquisitions has really been a growth strategy for DayDayCook since 2022, prior to our listing on the New York Stock Exchange. And ever since listing in November 2023, we've had a number of brands and businesses really reach out to us for potential roll-up strategy and also partnership. But then, there's one special person, which is a really long-term investor and a good friend of mine. He's deep into Bitcoin. And I remember last September, he told me I should really think outside of the box and start considering acquiring digital assets, in particular Bitcoin, for DDC. I think that would be really the start of me going down the orange rabbit hole, if you will. I spent, a couple of months studying Saylor's playbook and really understanding the accumulation model. I think it became clear to me that it is the best way to build long-term shareholder value. As an ex-equity research analyst, I did that for about 10 years before I started DDC. I like to simplify investment decisions into several key points. And I think these are the ones that draws me to Bitcoin. The first one is really scarcity, right? Having a finite supply really sets Bitcoin apart from holding fiat currency, where we are subject to, infinite printing by governments. I believe it is our best defense against inflation and all kinds of, counterparty risks. Second thing is consistency, right? I mean, since 2011, Bitcoin has really delivered CAGR of over 70%, outperforming all major asset class. That's a pretty good, strong track record. Finally, I think is really longevity and having that staying power. I mean, Bitcoin has survived, 3 full market cycles, government bans, exchange failures, and also media skepticism, and yet it continues to grow. I think these are 3 factors that make up the core reason for me to bring Bitcoin onto DDC as a platform.
Yeah, that's a great explanation, and I would definitely agree with those. I need to ask, Norma, were you into Bitcoin individually or orange pilled yourself before the decision at DDC, or was that kind of in tandem?
No, because I actually started buying Bitcoin in 2021. I wish it was a lot sooner. But that year, I think it was the start of Bitcoin being a bit more mainstream. I remember that year, Tesla announced a big Bitcoin purchase of somewhere around 1.5 billion US dollars. Several major credit card companies also started integrating, crypto as part of their solutions. And in Hong Kong in particular, for the year 2021, Bitcoin was very popular. So that was my very first taste of the orange pill.
There you go. We all wish we bought more when we first heard about it, but unfortunately, that's how Bitcoin works. Now, you make reference to Tesla making a large purchase in Bitcoin. DayDayCook has also been making some big moves. Just this morning, you guys came out with a massive press release, $528 million raise to support this Bitcoin strategy. So we're going to get into that, but can you talk to us about some of the steps you've taken so far and ultimately the culmination in today's press release?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I started going down the rabbit hole and really decided that this is the best decision for DDC, I didn't take it to the board right away. I also spent some time in thinking about possibilities of integration down the road. So I presented to the board and we got full approval in February of this year. And then, subsequently, we also announced the completion of the first 100 Bitcoin purchase in May. And we did that announcement in Vegas Bitcoin conference last month. That was amazing. And today, we announced a significant round of financing, partnering with Anson Fund and also a handful of well-known Bitcoin investors for our PIPE investment. So I'm very excited about this. For the Bitcoin strategy to really work and take off, obviously a tremendous amount of financing is needed. We are very fortunate to have found really good partners to start this journey, and that's really going to help me focus on execution going forward.
Sure. And I know you made reference to Saylor's playbook. Is the idea or strategy here to continue to accumulate with no sales in sight, similar to Saylor, or do you look at Bitcoin as an option to sell if and when needed?
No, I mean, we're just getting started. We're going to continue to stack. I mean, when we look at the positive trend for Bitcoin over the next 3, 5, 10 years, there's really no reason for us to sell any of the Bitcoin that we're starting to stack right now.
Good answer. I love that one. So long-term buy and hold here. Now, you mentioned the board approval. How have your current investors, new investors, and the board reacted to this pivot? I know it's quite controversial, especially going to the board for the first time. That's a big, big step. How was the reaction?
My board members have been with DDC for a number of years, so they do understand my character as a leader. Whenever I present something, it's usually very well thought out, and I've done my research and really think that it's going to be the best decision for the company going forward. So, I have three independent board of directors. One of them, he is very crypto native, so that there didn't need to be any kind of education. But my other board members, they're more, consumer focused, they're consumer veterans from that sector. I did tell them to, do their own research, but, listen to what I think is the best reason for the company. So it didn't take a whole lot of convincing. I mean, when you look at the stats and the key points that I told you about just now, I think a lot of reasonable business person would find that it is a very good, solid strategy for any listed company out there.
Yeah, it definitely seems to sell itself once people understand. Now, in terms of new investors, I've seen the company around on X and in social media quite a bit since this Bitcoin pivot. Have you found there's a lot of renewed investor interest and attention in your story?
Absolutely. I mean, especially during that week in Vegas at the Bitcoin conference, the first thing was I did want to tell the market, both my existing and potential new investor, why we're making this move. So, Bryce, if you haven't read my manifesto, please take a look at it. And for all your audience, check out, DDC BTC manifesto. It really explains why we are making this move. And ever since we dropped that manifesto and subsequently announced the completion of the first 100 Bitcoin purchases, I mean, share price have had a very, very nice re-rating for, 6 consecutive days that basically, I would say tripled our market cap in a very short period of time. So I think the market is definitely, positively receiving this strategic change.
Yeah, it most definitely is. There seems to be that kind of Bitcoin contagion effect. As soon as a company touches Bitcoin, obviously a lot of people have interest in that company. Now, in terms of new opportunities or doors that this has opened, how has the company transformed, or what new opportunities do you see now that Bitcoin is part of the foundation?
I think we are going to stay focused right now. I think the biggest opportunity in front of us is really focus on execution, continue to stack BTC, continue to drive, positive and consistent BTC yield for a shareholder. I think that is the biggest opportunity that we should be focusing on. Of course, in the medium to long term, there is a lot of possibilities that we're thinking about how we can integrate Bitcoin into the underlying foundational business to drive more efficiency and profitability down the road. But I would say in the next, 12 to 18 months, my focus is really to continue to stack Bitcoin.
That's great. Yeah, I wanted to pry a bit there for the synergies, but I guess we'll have to have you back, Norma, for that in terms of business integration. Now, with the Bitcoin, the big announcement today, the 528 million, how do you intend to use that money? Are you going to be dollar cost averaging? Is that all going towards Bitcoin? How will the purchases be set up? Can you talk to us a little bit about the details?
Sure. I mean, we are definitely going to be very focused on uses of funds, all going into stacking Bitcoin. In terms of our purchase strategy for BTC, we are going to consistently buy in the market. And one thing I think is very interesting for us to continue to explore, similar to the first 100 Bitcoin purchase, is that we will continuously to work with big Bitcoin holders and big Bitcoin investors and potentially corporations and see how we can find ways that we can effectively buy bitcoins below market price. If you look at our first 100 Bitcoin or the first 138 Bitcoin, right now our average our average cost per BTC holding is roughly below 70,000 US dollars, and it's really how we issue shares, DDC shares, in exchange for Bitcoin investors to inject or sell their Bitcoin to our company. So I think that's one thing that we're going to continuously to explore because we are very mindful of consistently buying during upcycle and down cycles for Bitcoin, at the same time finding creative ways to also manage our cost overall.
Excellent. And in closing here, Norma, I just wanted your opinion on the sector in general. We've seen a lot of companies now transition into this style of playbook. Do you feel like the space is starting to get crowded, or do you think there's still enough investor appetite for these type of Bitcoin proxies?
Um, I think we are still so early in the whole space. Even though we are in this space, so we always see a lot of announcements come out. We're like, oh my God, there's a lot of people, like a lot of companies doing this. Yes, there are more company doing this, but if we are not observing this space as closely as we are, a lot of people are still not aware of it. And I think there's a lot of listed company, actually a lot of companies, private and public, are still not open to this idea. So I think we are still very, very beginning of how this whole sector will grow. And I'm just excited to be one of the early adopters and the first female founder to adopt the strategy globally. So it's a really great time to be in this space.
Most definitely, and a big congratulations. We've actually had 21 of the top 100 Bitcoin Treasury companies on the channel. So you're the 21st and the first female founded as well, Norma.
Oh my
So
God,
congratulations. The 21st is
amazing.
obviously pretty special for the 21 million. So,
Absolutely.
now in closing, anything
Gosh,
we've forgotten
you
to
made
talk.
my day just now.
There you go. Well, like you say, we still are very early, and not even corporations, public, private, but just individuals. If you go to a store and talk to 10 people, I'm sure 7, 8 of them still don't even know what
Absolutely.
Bitcoin is. So very early in the adoption cycle, and very exciting to see such a sizable move from DDC. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to close out. The only final question I have for you, since you are a Bitcoiner, do you think this 4-year cycle will look different? You just mentioned that you plan to buy at the top and the bottom. I know there's a lot of companies in the same boat. Do you feel like we're still going to see those big 4-year cycle swings, or do you think there's more of a stable buying base now?
I think there is going to be a cycle like all asset classes, but I think the cycles is going to have smaller movements and less dramatic movements versus what we've seen in the past. Once again, fundamental analyst before, if you like a stock, if you like an asset class, when it dips below and when it's during a down cycle, that's actually the best time to buy.
Yeah, we kind of have a similar stance on our channel as well, that there may be muted moves now and not as dramatic, not as volatile as more people adopt. So excellent discussion today. Very exciting to learn more about your organization. What should people be watching for next? If they'd like to get more information, what's the best way to get in contact?
Follow me on X. My handle is DDC Norma, or follow DDC. The handle is DDC BTC underscore.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the time. You guys, if you have any more questions for the first female founded Bitcoin Treasury company, 21 on our list, leave them in the comment section below. We'd love to pass them along. If you're still watching, hopefully you found some interest. So hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. We'll see you back here tomorrow.